Imagine discovering that the people you trust most are the ones destroying what you love. Ethan Reynolds had everything a man could want: power that moved markets, wealth that built empires, a mansion where silence cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. But power doesn't warm cold sheets at night. Money doesn't answer when you call your children's names and hear only emptiness echo back. He stood in his office on the 47th floor, watching the city lights flicker like dying stars, and felt something crack inside his chest. Not his heart, but the armor around it. Stay with me until the end, because this story will show you that sometimes the richest man in the world is the one who has nothing left to lose. And if you believe that love hides where we least expect it, hit like and subscribe. This one will change how you see everything. The first sign came on a Tuesday. Ethan arrived home early, his leather shoes silent against marble floors that reflected a life too perfect to be real. He heard laughter from the garden, light, careless, the kind that doesn't care who's listening. Through the window, he saw Vanessa, his fiancée, her golden hair catching late afternoon sun, her phone pressed to her ear, her smile too wide for a simple conversation. "He doesn't suspect a thing," she said, her voice carrying on the breeze. "The fool actually thinks I love him." The words hit like glass shattering in slow motion. Ethan didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there watching the woman who wore his ring mock the man who gave her everything. But it was what came next that made his blood run cold. "The kids," Vanessa laughed, sharp, hollow. "They're terrified of me. Good. Keeps them quiet. Lily, Matthew, his children." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He walked the empty halls of his mansion, past rooms filled with things that meant nothing, until he stood outside his children's door. He pressed his palm against the wood, feeling the barrier between him and the truth. Inside, he heard whispers. "Don't cry, Lily, she'll hear you." Matthew's voice, 8 years old, trying to sound brave. "I miss Daddy." Lily's words broke into sobs she tried to swallow. "Why doesn't he come home anymore?" "He's busy. He doesn't know." Ethan's hand trembled against the door. Doesn't know. The two words that would haunt him, because he'd been too busy building kingdoms to notice his own, was burning. The next morning, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. He called his most trusted assistant, the only person who'd known him before the money, before the name that opened every door became the cage that trapped him. "Marcus, I need you to make me disappear." 24 hours later, Ethan Reynolds, CEO, millionaire, the man whose signature moved billions, no longer existed. In his place stood Robert. Just Robert. No last name, no history. A man in worn jeans and a faded shirt, calluses on his hands from work he'd never actually done, a beard growing in to hide the face that graced magazine covers. The gardener. His own head of staff hired him without a second glance. Why would she look twice at a man whose eyes stayed down, whose voice stayed quiet, who arrived at dawn and left at dusk, tending flowers that would bloom and die without anyone noticing? Invisible. Exactly what Ethan needed to be. The first day, he worked in silence, his hands in soil that smelled of earth and rain, his eyes watching everything. The mansion looked different from the outside, smaller somehow despite its size. Or maybe he'd just been too far above it to see clearly. Vanessa barely acknowledged him. She walked past, her perfume expensive and cold, her heels clicking like a countdown. She was on her phone, always on her phone, her voice sweet as poison. "Lily, come here." Ethan's hands stilled in the dirt. His daughter appeared, 7 years old, her dark curls tangled, her dress wrinkled. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone walking on ice that might crack. "Yes, Miss Vanessa?" "Miss Vanessa." Not Mom. not even her name with warmth. "You left your toys in the hallway again." Vanessa's voice dropped sharp enough to cut. "What did I tell you about making messes?" "I'm sorry, Sorry doesn't clean it up, does it?" Vanessa grabbed Lily's arm, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to hurt. "You're just like your father, careless, thoughtless." Lily's lip trembled, but she didn't cry. She'd learned not to. Ethan's fingers dug into the earth, dirt under his nails, rage burning in his throat. Every instinct screamed to stand up, to cross that garden, but he couldn't, not yet. He had to see everything, know everything, because if he revealed himself too soon, Vanessa would lie, would twist, would make him doubt what his eyes were telling him. So he stayed on his knees in the dirt and watched his daughter walk away, her shoulders small and hunched, carrying weight no child should bear. That's when he heard the voice. "Hey, you okay?" Soft, careful, like someone used to speaking to frightened things. Ethan looked up. A woman stood a few feet away holding a basket of cleaning supplies, her uniform simple and worn, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wasn't looking at him. She was watching Lily disappear into the house, her expression troubled. "I'm fine," Ethan said, his voice rougher than intended. The woman glanced at him then, and for a moment their eyes met. Hers were brown, warm, with shadows underneath that spoke of long nights and longer worries. "She's just a little girl," the woman said quietly, more to herself than to him. Then she walked away, following the path Lily had taken, and Ethan realized two things. One, she'd seen what he'd seen. She knew. Two, she cared. That afternoon, Ethan learned her name from the cook. Grace Miller, 28, single mother, worked 3 jobs to keep her daughter in school. Been with the household for 6 months, quiet, never complained. The kind of person people forgot was in the room. The kind of person who saw everything. Ethan found himself watching her the way she'd watched Lily, carefully, curiously. She moved through the mansion like water, smoothing rough edges, cleaning messes, speaking softly to Matthew when he scraped his knee, offering Lily a cookie when Vanessa wasn't looking. Small kindnesses, the kind that don't cost money. The kind Ethan had forgotten existed. 3 days into his disguise, Ethan witnessed the moment that changed everything. It was evening, the house settling into that strange quiet before night. He was trimming hedges near the kitchen window when he heard the crash, glass shattering, a child's sharp cry. He dropped the shears and moved. Inside, Matthew stood frozen, a broken vase at his feet, water and flowers scattered across expensive tile. His face was white, his hands shaking. Vanessa appeared in the doorway like a storm. "What did you do?" Matthew couldn't speak, just stared at the mess, at the evidence of his mistake, his whole body trembling. "That vase cost more than..." Vanessa's hand rose, and Grace stepped between them, just stepped. No words, no hesitation. Just a woman in a maid's uniform placing herself between a child and harm, her body a shield, her eyes meeting Vanessa's without flinching. The air crackled with tension. "Move," Vanessa hissed. Grace didn't move. "I said move." It was an accident. Grace's voice was steady, calm, despite the way her hands trembled at her sides. "He's just a boy. He's a careless, stupid... He's a child." The words hung in the air, quiet and absolute. Vanessa's face twisted with rage, but something in Grace's expression, some unshakable gentleness, some quiet strength, made her pause. "Clean it up," Vanessa finally spat. "Both of you. And if anything else breaks, you're both fired." She turned and left, her heels sharp as gunshots. Grace knelt immediately, picking up glass with careful fingers, and Matthew collapsed beside her, tears finally breaking free. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Hey." Grace's hand touched his shoulder, gentle as a whisper. "It's okay, accidents happen. But the vase, it was expensive and things break. People matter more." Matthew looked at her like she'd just given him permission to breathe. Outside the window, hidden in shadow, Ethan Reynolds felt something crack inside his chest. Deeper this time, in a place money had never touched. He'd just watched a woman with nothing risk everything for his son. While he, the father, the protector, the man with all the power, had stood outside disguised as someone who didn't matter, watching through glass. The question that kept him awake that night wasn't about Vanessa anymore. It was about Grace. Who was she? This woman who cleaned his floors and protected his children, who spoke softly and stood bravely, who seemed to see worth where others saw only trouble. And why did her kindness feel like a mirror reflecting everything he'd lost? The days blurred into a pattern Ethan had never known existed, the rhythm of invisible people, those who kept worlds turning while the powerful slept. He arrived before sunrise, when dew still clung to grass and the mansion held its breath. Grace was always there first, a shadow moving through rooms, her hands erasing yesterday's mess before today could begin. Sometimes he'd catch her pausing at a window, staring out at nothing, her expression distant and aching. Then she'd blink, straighten her shoulders and return to work. She carried sadness the way some people carry perfume, quietly, but unmistakable once you noticed. Ethan found himself noticing everything. The way she hummed under her breath when she thought no one was listening, old songs, soft and worn like comfort blankets. The way she always left cookies on the counter at 3:15, exactly when Matthew and Lily came home from school. The way her hands never stopped moving, as if stillness meant thinking and thinking meant remembering things that hurt. He watched her the way he used to watch markets, looking for patterns, for truth hidden in numbers. Except Grace wasn't a puzzle to solve. She was something else entirely, something real. One morning he found her in the garden, kneeling beside the roses he'd been pruning. She didn't see him approach, too focused on the flower in her palm, a bloom that had opened overnight, petals soft as secrets. "They're beautiful when you really look at them," she said without turning around. Ethan stopped. "You knew I was here." "Your shadow came first." She glanced back, a small smile touching her lips. "You're quieter than most gardeners." He couldn't tell if she was suspicious or just observant. He knelt beside her, keeping distance between them, his hands finding dirt that didn't need tending. "You come out here a lot," he said carefully. "It's peaceful. Inside." She paused, her fingers gentle on the petals. "Inside is different." They worked in silence for a moment, the morning air cool and clean, the mansion looming behind them like a beautiful tomb. "The children," Grace said quietly. "Matthew and Lily, do you have kids?" The question hit harder than she could know. "No," Ethan lied, the word ash in his mouth. Grace nodded slowly. "They're good kids. Sweet. Too sweet for—" She stopped herself, but Ethan heard what she didn't say. "Too sweet for this place, for her." "You care about them," Ethan said. "Someone should." The words came out sharper than intended. Grace's hand stilled on the flower, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost apologetic. "Their father's never here. He doesn't see what's happening, and their mother—" She caught herself, shaking her head. "I shouldn't talk about my employers. Sometimes the truth needs saying." Grace looked at him then, really looked, her brown eyes searching his face like she was trying to read something written in a language she almost understood. "Why do you care?" she asked. "Because they're mine," Ethan wanted to say. "Because I've been blind and you've been their light. Because every kindness you've shown them is a mirror reflecting my failures." Instead, he said, "I had a little sister once. She needed someone to notice. No one did. It wasn't entirely a lie. He'd had a sister. Cancer took her when he was 15, when he learned that money couldn't buy more time, couldn't negotiate with death, couldn't fix the things that mattered most. Grace's expression softened, understanding settling in her eyes. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just keep noticing. Keep caring." She held his gaze a moment longer, then nodded and stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "I should get back. Miss Vanessa will be awake soon." Ethan watched her walk away, her figure small against the mansion's shadow, and felt something dangerous growing in his chest. Not just gratitude, but something warmer, something that made him want to follow her inside, to stay close, to learn the shape of her kindness. That afternoon, everything shifted. Ethan was trimming hedges near the pool when he heard Vanessa's voice, sharp and sudden like breaking glass. "You think I don't notice?" He moved closer, hidden behind manicured bushes, his heart accelerating. Vanessa stood on the patio, phone pressed to her ear, her face twisted with calculation. "The prenup is airtight, but once we're married, things change. Community property, access. I just need him to sign the updated documents before he starts asking questions." A pause, then laughter, cold and pleased. "The kids are leverage. He won't leave them. And if he tries, well, accidents happen. Nannies are careless. Children fall." Ethan's blood turned to ice. She wasn't just cruel. She was dangerous. His fingers crushed the hedge clipper's handles, metal biting into his palms. Every instinct screamed to confront her, to end this nightmare, to protect his children right now. But something stopped him. Not fear, not strategy, grace. Because as Vanessa spoke, threatening his children with casual evil, Grace appeared in the doorway behind her, carrying fresh towels, her face pale, her eyes wide with horror. She'd heard everything. For 3 seconds, their eyes met. Vanessa turning, Grace frozen, the truth hanging between them like a blade. "How long have you been standing there?" Vanessa's voice was silk over steel. Grace's throat worked. "I just arrived. I have your towels, Miss Vanessa." "I asked you a question." "I didn't hear anything, I swear." Vanessa moved closer, studying Grace the way predators study prey. "You know what happens to staff who gossip, who spread lies about their employers. I wouldn't. You'd lose your job, your references. Every door in this city would close." Vanessa's smile was knife-sharp. "And I know about your daughter, Emma, isn't it? Sweet girl. It would be such a shame if her school lost its funding, if her scholarship disappeared." Grace's face went white. Her hands trembled on the towels, knuckles bone pale. "Do we understand each other?" "Yes, Miss Vanessa." "Good." Vanessa took the towels, her expression bored again, the threat delivered and forgotten. "You're dismissed." Grace turned and walked away, her steps measured and careful. But Ethan saw what Vanessa didn't, the way Grace's shoulders shook, the way she pressed one hand to her mouth as soon as she thought she was alone. He found her 10 minutes later in the laundry room, sitting on the floor between washing machines, her face buried in her hands, silent sobs shaking her whole body. Ethan hesitated in the doorway. Robert the gardener had no reason to be here, no excuse to intrude on private grief, but he couldn't walk away. He sat down beside her, not touching, just present, and waited. Grace looked up, tears streaming down her face, surprise and embarrassment warring in her expression. "I'm sorry, She wiped at her eyes roughly. "I'm fine." "You're not." "I can't afford not to be." Her voice cracked. "I have a daughter. She's 9. She's smart and kind, and she deserves better than a mother who cleans other people's houses and can barely afford rent. This job," her breath hitched, "this job pays for her school, for her future, and I just heard something I can't unhear, and if I speak, we lose everything." Ethan's jaw clenched. "What did you hear?" Grace looked at him, weighing trust, weighing risk. Finally, she whispered, "She's going to hurt them, the children, and I can't stop her. If I tell anyone, she'll destroy us. But if I stay silent, you'll never forgive yourself." "No," Grace's voice was barely audible. "I won't." They sat in silence, the machines humming around them, two people carrying impossible choices. "What if you didn't have to choose?" Ethan said carefully. Grace shook her head. "There's no other way. There's always another way." She looked at him then, hope and desperation mingling in her eyes. "Like what?" Ethan wanted to tell her everything, who he was, what he was doing, that she wasn't alone in this fight. But revealing himself now could ruin everything. Vanessa would disappear, cover her tracks, and his children would remain in danger. So instead he said, "Watch over them, protect them, and trust that someone's paying attention." "Who?" "Someone who sees what you see." Grace studied his face, confusion and something else flickering across her features, a strange recognition, like looking at a familiar stranger. "Why do you care so much?" she asked again, softer this time. "Because you're everything I forgot how to be," Ethan thought. "Because watching you love my children is teaching me what love actually means." "Because," he said quietly, "some things are worth risking everything for." Grace held his gaze, and in that moment something passed between them. Understanding, alliance, the beginning of trust that felt like falling. She nodded slowly, wiping the last tears from her face. "Okay. Okay." She stood, straightening her uniform, rebuilding the armor she wore to survive. But before she left, she paused, looking back at him. "Robert? Yes? Thank you for sitting with me." Then she was gone, and Ethan sat alone in the laundry room, surrounded by the smell of detergent and the weight of secrets, knowing that everything had just changed. He'd come here to unmask betrayal, but Grace Miller was unmasking his heart. The mansion grew colder as October bled into November, but the chill had nothing to do with weather. Ethan watched Vanessa's mask slip further each day, saw the way she smiled for cameras and snarled behind closed doors, the way she touched his children like they were obstacles instead of people. She was building something, he realized. A fortress of lies, contracts signed in shadows, lawyers who asked no questions. She was preparing for war, but so was he. Grace became his anchor in the storm, not because she knew who he was, but because she didn't. To her, he was just Robert, a gardener with calloused hands and quiet eyes. Someone who understood that silence could be kindness. They fell into a rhythm, neither acknowledged, but both needed. Early mornings in the garden, working side by side, words unnecessary. She'd bring him coffee, black, no sugar, and he'd leave wildflowers on the kitchen windowsill where she'd see them first. Small gestures, simple truths. One evening he found her reading to Lily in the library, her voice soft as rain. The little girl curled against her side like she'd finally found safe harbor. Matthew sat at her feet, building something with blocks, his face peaceful for the first time in weeks. Ethan stood in the doorway, hidden, watching the family portrait he should have been part of, except the woman holding his daughter, making his son smile, wasn't the one wearing his ring. It was the one stealing his heart. Grace looked up suddenly, as if sensing him there. Their eyes met across the room and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, longing, the dangerous beginning of something neither could name. She looked away first, but her cheeks flushed pink, and Ethan knew she felt it too. This pull, this impossibility. That night, unable to sleep. He walked the grounds under a sky heavy with stars. He didn't hear her approach until she spoke. Couldn't sleep either. Grace stood a few feet away, wrapped in a cardigan too thin for the cold, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger like this, softer, like maybe she'd left her armor inside. "Too much thinking," Ethan said. "I know the feeling." She moved closer, hugging herself against the chill. "Sometimes I think too much silence is worse than noise, leaves too much room for truth." "What truth are you avoiding?" She smiled sadly. "That I'm tired. That I work 3 jobs and still can't give my daughter the life she deserves. That I see children every day who have everything except what matters, and I can't fix that either." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That I'm falling for someone I shouldn't even be talking to." The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and fierce. Ethan's heart stopped, started, stopped again. "Grace, don't." She held up a hand, not looking at him. "Don't say anything. I know it's inappropriate. You work here, I work here. We're both just trying to survive, and I have no right to feel—" Her voice cracked. "But when you look at me, I feel seen, really seen, and I haven't felt that in so long I forgot what it was like." Every word she spoke was a knife to his chest, beautiful and brutal, because she was falling for a lie. Robert wasn't real. The man she was seeing didn't exist. And when the truth came out, when she learned who he really was, what he'd been hiding, would she ever forgive him? Could he even ask her to? "You deserve to be seen," Ethan said carefully, each word a tightrope. "You deserve everything you're giving others." Grace finally looked at him, tears shining in her eyes. "Why does that feel impossible?" "Because we're taught that wanting more is selfish, that surviving should be enough." He moved closer, drawn by gravity he couldn't fight. "But you're not just surviving, Grace. You're teaching 2 broken children how to be whole. You're holding together pieces of a house that's falling apart. You matter." "So do you," she whispered. "Even if you're just a gardener who trims roses and listens to sad women in laundry rooms. Just a gardener." The words should have hurt. Instead, they felt like freedom, because in this moment, that's all he was. Not CEO, not millionaire, not the man whose name opened doors and closed hearts. Just someone standing in starlight with a woman who made him remember what it felt like to be human. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, catching a tear she didn't know had fallen. "Grace," he said quietly, "if things were different, but they're not." Her hand covered his, holding it against her face. "I know that. I'm not asking for different. I'm just grateful for this, for you seeing me too." They stood like that, touching but not kissing, close but not crossing the line, both knowing this moment was all they'd ever have. Then the patio door opened, and Vanessa's voice shattered the night. "Grace, where the hell are you?" Grace jumped back like she'd been burned, her hand flying to her mouth. Panic flashed across her face. "Go," Ethan said urgently. "I was never here." She hesitated 1 heartbeat, then ran toward the house, leaving him alone in the garden, with the ghost of her touch still warm on his skin. The next day, everything unraveled. Ethan was pruning hedges when he heard screaming, Lily's voice high and terrified, coming from inside the house. He dropped everything and ran. He found them in the hallway, Lily backed against the wall, her face streaked with tears, Matthew standing in front of her like a tiny soldier, and Vanessa towering over them both, her hand raised, her face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "Stop!" Grace appeared from nowhere, stepping between Vanessa and the children again, her body a shield, her hands trembling but firm. "Move!" Vanessa hissed. "No!" I will end you, do you understand? I will destroy everything you love. Then destroy me. Grace's voice shook but didn't break. But you will not touch these children. Time crystallized, sharp and clear. Vanessa's hand was still raised. Grace's eyes were blazing. The children were sobbing. And Ethan stood in the doorway, watching the woman he was falling for risk everything for his children while he hid behind a disguise. Watching her be the parent he should have been. Something inside him snapped. Enough. One word. His real voice. The voice that commanded boardrooms and closed billion-dollar deals. Everyone turned. Ethan stepped forward, shedding Robert like old skin, his shoulders straightening, his presence filling the hallway in a way a gardener's never could. Daddy? Lily's voice was small, confused. Vanessa's face went white. Ethan! Grace's eyes widened, shock and betrayal warring in her expression. What? Grace, Ethan said, his voice gentle despite the chaos. Take the children upstairs. Now. She didn't move, couldn't move, staring at him like he was a stranger wearing a familiar face. Please, he said softly, trust me one more time. Something in his tone, some desperate honesty, broke through her shock. She nodded once, gathered Lily and Matthew, and disappeared up the stairs, looking back only once with eyes full of questions Ethan didn't know how to answer. Then he turned to Vanessa and smiled. Hello, darling, he said quietly. We need to talk. Vanessa's shock lasted 3 seconds. Then her expression shifted, calculating, cold, the woman who'd been planning this all along. How long? She asked. Long enough. You've been spying on me? In your own house? She laughed, sharp and bitter. How pathetic. Not spying, learning. There's a difference. Ethan moved closer, his voice dangerously calm. I know about the documents, the phone calls, the plans you made while wearing my ring. Vanessa's jaw tightened. You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove anything. I just need you gone. He pulled papers from his pocket, divorce papers Marcus had prepared weeks ago. Sign these. Leave quietly. I'll give you money to start over, more than generous, but you'll never see me or my children again. And if I refuse, then I'll make sure every door in this city closes for you the way you threatened to close them for Grace. His voice dropped to ice. I didn't become who I am by being merciful to people who hurt my family. Vanessa studied him, weighing odds, calculating escape routes. Then she smiled, cold and bitter. You're weak, she said. You always were. Hiding behind money, behind power, because you're too afraid to actually feel anything. Her eyes glittered. That's why you fell for the maid, isn't it? Because she makes you feel like you're not empty inside? The words hit their target, but Ethan didn't flinch. Sign the papers, Vanessa. She grabbed the pen, signed with violent strokes, then threw the papers at his feet. I hope she breaks your heart, Vanessa said, the way you clearly broke hers today. Then she was gone, heels clicking down the hallway, leaving destruction in her wake. Ethan stood alone in the silence, victory tasting like ash. Because Vanessa was right about one thing. He'd protected his children, but he'd destroyed the woman who'd protected them first. Upstairs, Grace was packing her things, tears streaming down her face, and Ethan didn't know if she'd ever let him close enough to explain. Ethan stood outside Grace's door for 10 minutes before knocking. He could hear movement inside, drawers opening, closing, the rustle of fabric being folded with shaking hands. She was leaving, running, and he couldn't blame her. He'd lied about everything. His knuckles touched wood. Once. Twice. The door opened. Grace stood there, her eyes red and swollen, a half-packed bag on the bed behind her. She didn't speak, just stared at him with a mixture of hurt and disbelief that carved through his chest like a blade. "Grace, don't." Her voice was raw. "Don't you dare. Please, let me explain." "Explain?" She laughed, brittle and broken. "You're Ethan Reynolds, the billionaire, the CEO, the man who owns this house, who employs me, who I've been—" Her voice cracked. "You watched me. You lied to me. You made me believe you were someone you're not." "I am that person," Ethan said desperately. "Robert, he's me, the real me. Without the money, without the name, without everything that made me forget what matters." "Stop." Grace held up a hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You don't get to rewrite this into something noble. You lied because you wanted to spy on your fiancé. I was just— What? Collateral? Entertainment? The poor maid who made you feel good about yourself? No. God, no." Ethan stepped forward, and she stepped back, keeping distance between them. "You saved my children. You showed me what I'd become, what I'd lost. You weren't collateral, Grace. You were everything I didn't know I needed." "I don't believe you." The words hit harder than any deal he'd ever lost. "Last night," Grace whispered, her voice shaking, "in the garden, when I told you how I felt, when I touched your face, you knew. You knew I was falling for a lie, and you let me." "How could you do that?" "Because I was falling too," Ethan wanted to say. "Because for the first time in 20 years, someone looked at me and saw a person instead of a bank account. Because your kindness made me remember I was human." But the words stuck in his throat, inadequate and too late. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know that's not enough. I know I hurt you. But please don't leave. The children need you. They love you." "The children need their father," Grace said sharply. "Not a maid. Not someone hired to care because their own parent couldn't be bothered." The accusation stung because it was true. "You're right," Ethan said. "I failed them. I was so busy building empires I didn't notice my own family falling apart. But you saw them when I couldn't. You protected them when I was too blind. You taught me what love actually looks like." Grace shook her head, wiping tears roughly. "Don't put that on me. I don't want to be your lesson. I don't want to be the noble poor person who teaches the rich man how to feel again." Her voice broke. "I just wanted to be seen, really seen. And I thought I thought he—" She couldn't finish, just pressed her hand to her mouth, sobbing. Ethan's heart shattered. "You were seen," he whispered. "You are seen. Every kindness, every sacrifice, every moment you chose compassion over cruelty. I saw all of it, and it changed me." "Then why does it feel like betrayal?" Because it was, Ethan realized. No matter his intentions, no matter his reasons, he'd taken her vulnerability and hidden behind lies. He'd let her fall for a man who didn't exist. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. "You can't." Grace turned away, continuing to pack. "Some things are broken beyond repair." "Grace, please, I need this job, Mr. Reynolds." Her voice went cold, formal, putting walls between them. "I need the money for my daughter's school, so I'll stay until I find something else, but I'm not your friend. I'm not your confidant. I'm just the maid, and you're just my employer. That's all we'll ever be." The distance in her words hurt more than any goodbye. Ethan wanted to argue, to fight, to find words that could bridge the chasm between them. But what right did he have? She was protecting herself, the way she'd protected his children. With walls he'd forced her to build. "Okay," he said quietly. "Whatever you need." He turned to leave but paused at the door. "For what it's worth," he said without looking back, "I wasn't pretending in the garden. Those feelings were real, are real, even if you never believe me." Then he left, closing the door on the woman who'd opened his heart. Downstairs, his children were waiting. Lily ran to him the moment he entered the living room, throwing her arms around his waist, sobbing into his shirt. Matthew followed, quieter but just as desperate, his small hands clutching Ethan's sleeve, like he was afraid his father might disappear again. "Daddy, I'm sorry," Lily cried. "I'm sorry we were bad. I'm sorry Miss Vanessa was mad. I'm sorry—" "No." Ethan dropped to his knees, pulling both children close, his own tears finally breaking free. "No, baby. None of this was your fault. None of it." "But she said—" "She lied." Ethan's voice shook. "She lied about everything. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't here, that I didn't see what was happening, that I let someone hurt you." "You were the gardener," Matthew said quietly, his face pressed against Ethan's shoulder. "Robert." "That was you." "Yes." "Why? How do you explain adult failures to a child? How do you say I was blind so I had to pretend to be someone else to see clearly?" "Because I made mistakes," Ethan said simply. "Big ones. And I needed to understand how to fix them." "Did you?" Lily pulled back, looking at him with eyes too old for 7. "Fix them?" Ethan thought of Vanessa, gone, of Grace upstairs packing her heart away, of his children finally safe but still scarred. "I'm trying," he said. They sat together on the floor, tangled in each other, 3 broken pieces trying to remember how to be a family. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping against windows like questions nobody could answer. "Is Miss Grace leaving?" Matthew asked. Ethan's throat tightened. "I don't know." "She can't leave," Lily said fiercely. "She's the only one who's nice to us, the only one who sees us." "She's the only one who sees us." His daughter's words echoed in his chest, and Ethan realized the cruel irony. He'd disguised himself to see the truth, but Grace had never needed a disguise. She'd seen clearly all along, seen his children's pain, seen through Vanessa's lies, seen the man beneath the money, and he'd repaid her honesty with deception. "I'll talk to her," Ethan promised, though he had no idea what he'd say. That night he found Grace in the kitchen at midnight, sitting in darkness, a cup of cold tea in her hands. She didn't look surprised when he appeared, just tired. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Emma called, my daughter." Grace's voice was hollow. "She wanted to tell me about her day, about a test she aced, about a boy who likes her, normal things. And I lied to her, told her everything was fine." She finally looked at him, and the exhaustion in her eyes broke something inside him. "I'm good at lying now," she said. "I learned from the best." The words were meant to wound. They succeeded. Ethan sat across from her, maintaining the distance she needed. "What can I do? Tell me how to make this right." "You can't." "Then tell me how to stop making it worse." Grace was quiet for a long moment, staring into her tea like it held answers. "I spent 6 months watching you on magazine covers," she finally said. "Ethan Reynolds, the man who had everything, and I thought, he has no idea what real life is like, what struggling means, what sacrifice looks like." She smiled sadly. "Then I met Robert, a gardener with kind eyes and gentle hands who listened when I spoke, who saw me, and I thought, finally, someone real." Her hands trembled around the cup. "But Robert was just another role you played, another mask. And now I don't know what's real anymore." "This is real," Ethan said quietly. Me sitting here trying to find words that don't exist. The way my heart stops when you walk into a room. The way watching you love my children taught me what love means. That's real, Grace, even if everything else was a lie. How do I trust that? I don't know. Ethan's voice cracked. I don't know how to prove what I feel, but I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to stay. For the children. They need you. And you. The question hung between them, dangerous and devastating. I need you too, Ethan whispered, but I have no right to ask. Grace stood, her movements slow and heavy. You're right. You don't. She walked to the door, then paused, her back to him. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I believed you, in the garden, when you touched my face. I believed every word. Grace, that's what hurts most. Not that you lied, but that even knowing it was a lie. I still believe. Then she left him alone in the darkness, and Ethan Reynolds, the man who'd built an empire, who'd conquered every challenge, who'd never met a problem money couldn't solve, finally understood what it meant to lose something priceless. 3 weeks passed like wounds healing slowly, painful, tender, leaving scars nobody could see. Grace stayed, but the woman who'd hummed in hallways and left wildflowers on windowsills was gone. In her place was someone efficient and distant, who smiled at the children but avoided Ethan's eyes, who worked her shifts and disappeared the moment they ended. She'd become invisible again. Exactly what Ethan had been pretending to be. The irony wasn't lost on him. He tried everything, left her notes she never acknowledged, raised her salary, she donated it to charity, offered her time off, she took extra shifts instead, as if staying busy meant not feeling. His children noticed. Why doesn't Miss Grace eat with us anymore? Lily asked one evening, pushing food around her plate. She's busy, sweetheart. She's sad. Matthew's voice was matter-of-fact, the way children speak truth adults dance around. Because of you. The accusation hung in the air, accurate and damning. I know, Ethan said quietly. So fix it, Lily demanded. Your daddy, you fix everything. If only it were that simple. That night, Ethan did something he hadn't done in years, called his sister's old therapist, the one who'd helped him after she died, before money became his armor and distance his shield. I hurt someone, he said into the phone, someone who didn't deserve it, and I don't know how to make it right. Dr. Sarah's voice was patient, familiar. Can you make it right, Ethan, or are you trying to make yourself feel better? The question gutted him. I don't know. Then maybe start there. Not with fixing, with understanding why you did what you did. So Ethan sat in his office, surrounded by deals worth millions, and finally admitted the truth he'd been avoiding. He'd disguised himself because he was terrified of being wrong, of having married the wrong person, built the wrong life, failed at the only thing money couldn't buy, being a good father. So he'd hidden behind Robert, using the gardener like armor, telling himself it was about truth. But really it was about control, and Grace had been collateral damage in his need to control everything, even his own vulnerability. The realization made him sick. He found Grace 2 days later in the garden, the place they'd first really talked, where she'd confessed her tiredness and he'd pretended to be someone safe. She was on her knees in the dirt, planting bulbs for spring flowers she might never see bloom. Her hands moved with mechanical precision, no joy, just motion. Grace. She didn't look up. Mr. Reynolds. The formal name still cut like glass. I need to tell you something, Ethan said, and I need you to hear it, not as my employee, not as someone who feels obligated, just as you. Her hands stilled in the soil, but she didn't turn around. I disguised myself because I was a coward, Ethan continued, his voice rough. Not because I was brave. I told myself it was about uncovering truth, but really, I was hiding. From my failures. From the man I'd become. From everything I was too afraid to face directly. He moved closer, kneeling in the dirt beside her, not touching. And then I met you. This woman who faced everything I was running from. Poverty, exhaustion, impossible choices. With grace I'd forgotten existed. You didn't hide, you didn't run, you just showed up. Every day, for people who couldn't pay you back, for children who weren't yours, because it was right. Grace's shoulders trembled, but she remained silent. I fell in love with you, Ethan whispered. Not Robert. Me. The broken, scared man hiding behind a costume. And that terrified me more than anything Vanessa could have done. Because loving you meant admitting I'd built my whole life wrong. That everything I thought mattered, the money, the power, the control, was just noise. A tear dropped into the dirt between them, darkening the soil. You asked how you could trust what's real, Ethan said. The truth is you can't. I broke that. I took your vulnerability and hid behind lies, and there's no taking that back. No fixing it with apologies or money or grand gestures. He picked up a bulb, turned it in his hands, small, humble, holding spring inside winter. But I can tell you this. Every word I spoke in that garden 3 weeks ago was true. Every moment I sat with you in the laundry room, every morning we worked side by side, that was real. The man who saw you, who fell for your kindness, who learned what love means by watching you, he's real, Grace. He's me, without disguises, without armor. Grace finally turned, and her face was wet with tears, her expression raw and aching. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to give me another chance. Ethan's voice broke. I'm just asking you to know that you were seen, that you matter. That meeting, you changed me in ways I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for, even if you never speak to me again. For a long moment, Grace just stared at him, her brown eyes searching his face for lies she'd learned to expect. I was married once, she said quietly. Ethan went still. Emma's father. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. Her voice was distant, like reading from someone else's story. Then I got pregnant. And suddenly the man I loved became a stranger, angry, controlling. He said I'd trapped him, that I'd ruined his life. She wiped her eyes roughly. I left when Emma was 6 months old, took nothing but my daughter and started over. 3 jobs, barely sleeping, terrified every day that I wasn't enough, that I'd fail her the way I'd failed at marriage. Grace looked at Ethan, and her eyes were ancient with hurt. So when I met Robert, this gentle gardener who listened, who cared about broken children, who made me feel worthy, I let myself believe. Because I needed to believe that good men existed, that love didn't always come with conditions. Grace. And then I learned Robert was a billionaire playing dress-up, and it felt like my ex all over again. Another man wearing a mask. Another lie I'd fallen for because I was too desperate, too lonely, too stupid. Stop. Ethan's voice was fierce. You are not stupid. You're not desperate. You're human. And you trusted because trust is what makes you beautiful, not what makes you weak. Grace shook her head. You don't understand. When you lied, you didn't just hurt me. You confirmed every fear I've carried for 9 years. That I can't trust my own judgment. That I see what I want to see, not what's real. The confession broke something in Ethan's chest, because he'd done more than break her heart. He'd reinforced wounds she'd been nursing long before they met. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Grace, I'm so sorry. They knelt there in the dirt, surrounded by bulbs waiting for spring. Two people carrying scars they hadn't made but kept bleeding anyway. "I don't know how to trust you," Grace finally said. "I want to, but I don't know how." "Then don't." Ethan's voice was gentle. "Don't trust me. But maybe trust yourself. Trust that you saw something real in me, even if I was hiding. Trust that your instincts aren't wrong. Your circumstances were just impossible." Grace looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "What are you asking for, Ethan?" The use of his real name sent electricity through his chest. "Time," he said simply. "A chance to prove that the man you met in the garden is who I really am. Not Robert, not the CEO, just me, flawed and scared and trying to be better. And if I can't, if the hurt is too deep, then I'll accept that, but I'll keep being that man anyway, for my children, for myself, because you taught me how." Grace was quiet, her hands pressed flat against the earth, grounding herself in something solid. "I need time," she finally said. "Real time to think, to heal, to figure out if what I felt was real or just loneliness wearing hope's face. Take all the time you need." She nodded slowly, then stood, brushing dirt from her knees. Before she walked away, she paused. "Ethan?" "Yes?" "Thank you for telling me about why you hid. It doesn't fix anything, but it helps." Then she was gone, and Ethan sat alone in the garden with spring bulbs and winter air, planting hope in frozen ground. Inside, through the window, Lily watched her father kneeling in dirt and smiled. Because even 7-year-olds know, some flowers need darkness before they bloom. Winter arrived with quiet cruelty, wrapping the mansion in frost and silence that pressed against windows like held breath. Grace kept her distance, a careful choreography of avoidance, working when Ethan was gone, leaving rooms when he entered, speaking only when necessary and never about anything that mattered. She was a ghost haunting her own life, present but untouchable. Ethan didn't push, didn't demand, just existed in the same space, trying to prove through actions what words had destroyed. He started small, made breakfast for his children instead of letting staff do it, burned toast, spilled orange juice, laughed at his failures while Lily and Matthew stared in wonder at their father stumbling through ordinary life. He drove them to school himself, learned their teachers' names, attended parent conferences, where he discovered Matthew struggled with math but loved drawing, that Lily was too quiet in class but wrote stories during recess about brave princesses who saved themselves. He'd missed so much while building kingdoms that didn't matter. Every evening he read to them before bed, voices for characters, silly accents that made them giggle, the kind of presents money couldn't buy and power couldn't fake. Sometimes, from the hallway, he'd catch Grace listening, her expression soft and unguarded before she remembered to rebuild her walls. Those moments gave him hope, even as they broke his heart. One December morning, snow fell soft and silent, blanketing the garden in white. Ethan watched from his window as Grace emerged, bundled in her thin coat, heading to the bus stop before dawn like always. He grabbed his keys without thinking, found her shivering at the corner, snow gathering on her shoulders, her breath fogging in frozen air. She tensed when his car pulled up but didn't run. He lowered the window. No words, just a gesture toward the passenger seat. Grace hesitated, pride warring with cold, then climbed in. They drove in silence through empty streets, heat warming the space between them, unspoken things filling what words couldn't reach. When he pulled up to her apartment, small, worn but clean, she finally spoke. "Thank you." "Emma," Ethan said quietly. "Your daughter. What does she like?" Grace's hand stilled on the door handle. "Why?" Because I'd like to know. She studied his face, searching for angles and manipulation, finding only genuine curiosity. Books, she said finally. She reads everything, dreams of being a writer. Ethan nodded, filing the information away like treasure. Grace left without another word, but something had shifted. A crack in the ice, small but significant. He started driving her to work every morning. Never asked permission, just appeared. And after 3 days of stubborn bus waiting, Grace stopped fighting and climbed in. They didn't talk much. Sometimes she'd mention Emma, how she'd aced a test, written a story about dragons, asked why her mother worked so much. Ethan would listen, memorizing details about this child he'd never met, but who held Grace's whole heart. Other times they'd just sit in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up. Two wounded people learning how to exist beside each other again. One morning, Grace found something on the passenger seat, a wrapped package, simple brown paper tied with string. She looked at Ethan, question in her eyes. "Not from me," he said, though they both knew he was lying. Someone left it. Inside was a collection of books, first editions, beautiful and rare, the kind that cost more than Grace made in a month. But attached was a note in unfamiliar handwriting, for Emma, because every writer needs good stories. Grace's eyes filled with tears she wouldn't let fall. "You can't." "I didn't," Ethan said softly. "Someone who believes in second chances did." She held the books like they were made of light, and for the first time in weeks smiled, not at him, but near him. And that was enough. Christmas approached with commercial violence, decorations and demands and expectations Ethan had always outsourced. This year, he brought Lily and Matthew to pick a tree themselves, dragging it home with pine needles trailing behind them, filling the house with green life and sap-sticky hands. They decorated together, a chaotic mess of tangled lights and mismatched ornaments, laughter echoing through rooms that had forgotten how joy sounded. Grace watched from doorways, her expression complicated, something between longing and fear, between wanting to join and needing to protect herself. Ethan pretended not to notice but left space beside them, an invitation without pressure. On Christmas Eve, snow fell heavy and thick, trapping everyone inside. The staff had left early, leaving just Ethan, his children and Grace, who'd planned to take the bus home, but couldn't navigate through white that erased roads. They sat together in the living room, not quite a family, but not quite strangers anymore. The tree lights cast soft colors across faces, and outside the world disappeared into winter. Lily fell asleep against Grace's side, small and trusting. Matthew's head drooped onto Ethan's shoulder, breathing deep and even. And for a moment, Grace's eyes met Ethan's across sleeping children, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. Grace spoke first, her voice barely a whisper. "I've been thinking." Ethan waited, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever this was. "About what you said, in the garden, about trusting myself." Her hand stroked Lily's hair absently, tender and protective. "I spent 9 years believing my judgment was broken because I chose wrong once. But maybe I wasn't wrong about you. Maybe I just needed you to be honest about who you were." "I should have been," Ethan said quietly. "From the beginning." "Yes." Grace looked at him directly. No walls, no armor. "But I understand why you weren't. Fear makes us do terrible things, even to people we're starting to love." The confession hung in the air, fragile and fierce. Ethan's throat tightened. "Are you? Starting to love me?" Grace smiled sadly. "I never stopped. That's the problem." Even when I hated you, even when I wanted to leave, I kept loving the man I met in the garden. The one who sat with me in laundry rooms and planted flowers and looked at his children like they were miracles. That man is real. I know. Her voice cracked. I know he is. And that's terrifying. They sat in silence, children breathing between them, snow falling outside, the weight of almost pressing down like prayer. I don't know how to do this, Grace whispered. How to love someone when I'm still scared. We figure it out together, Ethan said. Slowly, honestly. No more disguises, no more hiding. Grace looked at him for a long moment, then did something that stole his breath. She reached across sleeping children and took his hand. Her fingers were small, work-worn, trembling slightly. His were larger, scarred from recent gardening, uncertain how to hold something so precious without breaking it. But they fit together anyway. Slowly, she agreed. Outside, snow continued falling, covering old wounds with new white, and inside, two people who'd lost themselves began the careful work of being found. Lily stirred, mumbling in her sleep. Miss Grace stayed. Grace's eyes filled with tears, the good kind, the kind that meant healing. Yes, baby, she whispered. I stayed. And in that moment, Ethan Reynolds, the man who'd had everything and lost what mattered, finally understood what wealth really meant. Not money, not power, but this hand holding his, these children sleeping safe, this woman choosing courage over fear, this second chance he'd almost destroyed, this love he'd finally earned. Spring came slowly, the way trust rebuilds, in small gestures and careful moments, in bulbs pushing through frozen earth because they remember what warmth feels like. Ethan and Grace moved through those months like dancers learning new steps, sometimes graceful, often stumbling, always trying. He didn't rush. She didn't run. They existed in the space between almost and always, letting time do what promises couldn't. Some mornings Grace accepted his rides without hesitation, coffee waiting in the cup holder, her favorite kind even though he'd never asked, he'd just noticed. Other days she'd take the bus, needing space to remember she was whole without him, and he'd understand without resentment. Progress looked like her laughing at his burnt pancakes. Like him meeting Emma, 9 years old with her mother's eyes and a notebook full of dragon stories, and listening to her read with the kind of attention that made her glow. Like Grace staying for dinner, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Like Lily calling her mom one Tuesday afternoon, then freezing in horror at the slip. Grace had knelt down, cupped that small, frightened face, and whispered something Ethan couldn't hear, but saw written in his daughter's relieved tears. Later, Grace told him what she'd said. You can call me whatever feels right. I'm not trying to replace anyone, I'm just trying to love you. That night, Ethan had cried in the shower where no one could see, overwhelmed by the grace of a woman who gave his children what he'd almost stolen, the freedom to love without fear. By March, the garden exploded with color, tulips and daffodils, crocuses pushing through remaining snow, proof that darkness doesn't last forever. Grace planted herbs in the kitchen garden, teaching Lily the names, letting Matthew dig with his hands, creating beauty from dirt and patience. Ethan would watch from windows, seeing what he'd almost lost, what he'd nearly destroyed with lies and pride and fear. One evening, he found Grace alone on the patio, wrapped in his jacket though spring was warm, staring at stars that witnessed everything and judged nothing. He sat beside her, close but not touching, learning her rhythms, respecting her boundaries. I've been offered a job, Grace said quietly. Ethan's heart stopped. Better pay, benefits. It's with a family in Boston. They have 2 kids who need a nanny, and they're offering to help Emma with college scholarships." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through everything. That's wonderful," Ethan managed, though his chest was caving in. Grace looked at him, reading the truth behind careful words. "I turned it down." He couldn't breathe. "Why?" "Because I spent 9 years running," she said softly. "New cities, new jobs, always moving before anyone could hurt me again. And I realized that's not freedom. That's just fear with better scenery." She turned toward him, and her eyes held something that made his heart restart. "I don't want to run anymore, Ethan. I want to stay. Not because I need this job, but because I need you. All of you. This messy, complicated, still healing family that somehow became mine." Ethan's throat closed around words too big to speak. "But I need to know," Grace continued, her voice trembling. "If I stay, if I risk this completely, I need to know you'll never hide again. No masks, no disguises, just truth even when it's ugly." "I promise," Ethan whispered. "No more hiding." Grace studied his face like she was memorizing architecture, then nodded. Okay, she smiled, real and full and beautiful. "I'm staying." Ethan pulled her close, careful even in joy, and she came willingly, folding into him like she'd always belonged there. They sat wrapped together under stars that had seen them broken and were now witnessing them whole. "I love you," Ethan said against her hair. "Not Robert, not the man I pretended to be, just me, flawed and learning and grateful beyond measure." Grace pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "I love you too." The real you, the one who burns toast and plants flowers and looks at his children like they're the reason the sun rises. Their first kiss was soft and salt-sweet with tears, both of them crying, both of them laughing, both of them finally free. Inside, Lily pressed her nose against the window, grinning. Matthew stood beside her, and Emma, visiting for the weekend, stood between them, watching her mother kiss the man who'd given her books and believed in her dreams. "Does this mean we're getting a dad?" Matthew asked. "Looks like it," Lily said wisely. Emma smiled. "Good. Mom deserves someone who sees her." 6 months later, Ethan Reynolds married Grace Miller in the garden where they'd first knelt together in dirt, planting bulbs and hope in equal measure. It wasn't a society wedding. No magazine covers or $1,000 centerpieces. Just family and friends, the children in matching outfits they'd picked themselves, Emma reading a poem she'd written about second chances, and vows spoken under trees that had witnessed their story from the beginning. When Ethan kissed his bride, Lily threw petals that caught in Grace's hair like blessings, and somewhere in the universe the man he'd pretended to be, gentle Robert the gardener, smiled and disappeared, his purpose complete. That evening, as sunset painted the sky gold and pink, the whole family sat together in the garden. Emma read her latest story aloud, while Lily and Matthew acted it out with dramatic flair. Grace leaned against Ethan's shoulder, her hand in his, her ring catching light. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Everything you went through to get here?" Ethan thought about the lies and pain, the masks and mistakes, the man he'd been and the man he'd become. "No," he said finally, "because it brought me to you, to this." Grace smiled, kissed his cheek, then turned back to watch their children create magic from imagination and love. Years later, when people asked how they met, Ethan and Grace would exchange glances, and he'd say, "She saved my children." And Grace would correct, "He saved himself. I just reminded him how." Both were true. Some love stories begin with grand gestures and perfect timing. Others begin in laundry rooms and gardens, between people broken enough to recognize each other's cracks, brave enough to choose healing over hiding. The best stories begin with truth, even when truth wears disguises, even when love looks like a gardener kneeling in dirt, even when the richest man in the world discovers that real wealth comes in small hands holding his, in laughter echoing through rooms that forgot joy, in a woman who taught him that being seen is worth more than being powerful. Ethan Reynolds had everything once, then he lost it all, and in losing, found what actually mattered. Not the mansion or the money or the name that opened doors, but the woman beside him, the children at their feet, the garden blooming with flowers planted in winter, and the knowledge that some riches can't be bought. They're earned by the heart. If this story touched your heart, like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of love and redemption. Because sometimes the greatest wealth is finding home in someone who sees you, truly sees you, and chooses to stay anyway. Tell us in the comments, from 0 to 10, what's your rating for this story? Some people are worth risking everything for. Grace was Ethan's everything. And love, real love, doesn't need disguises. It just needs truth.